suicide has risen to epidemic proportions right here in America. A country that is maybe seen as, oh man, that's the happiest place, man. The economy is great, and there's so many wonderful things, and we're not a third world country, and there's enough wealth there. Ironically, there's also a lot of pain and brokenness, and I tell you, some of the statistics are quite alarming that we're learning. There is a National Institute of Mental Health that did a study in 2017, and some of the statistics are they're mind-blowing. And just suicidal thoughts, about 1 out of every 25 people has had suicidal thoughts. And that may not sound like a lot, but you can be in a room of just 100 people, and you can pretty much guarantee that 4 people in that room has thought about taking their own life. You get into a stadium of people, or an arena of people, or even in our own worship center, those numbers start increasing, and you're like, that's interesting to think about. But probably some of the most alarming things is that in the age bracket from the age 10 to age 34, suicide is the second leading cause of death. And we found that in the year 2017, there were literally 2 times as many deaths by suicide as there were homicides. To me, that's just such an alarming statistic. And then the Journal of Abnormal Psychology did a study as well, and they saw that the rate of suicide for 20 and 21-year-olds doubled between the year of 2009 and 2017. To me, it's just such an epidemic. It's a problem that we need to open our eyes to, and I firmly believe as a pastor, we need to make sure that we're engaging this topic and that we're talking about it and that it's not taboo and that we're doing something, kind of linking arms together to do something about it. And then that segues nicely into some truths that I think we must embrace that are super important, because here's the thing. Suicide feeds off lies. In my opinion, the reason anybody would ever want to take their own life is they believe something that just isn't true about themselves, about life. So if we're going to do something about suicide, I think we must starve suicide with truth. And there's these 4 truths that I just like to share with you. First, you are not alone. You're not alone. And we need to make sure as the church that we're not letting people be isolated and be alone in whatever it is that they're battling, because everybody has their own battle. And there's anxiety and depression certainly is one of the first things you think about when it comes to this issue of suicide. And it's easy for people to maybe just think, I tell you what, nobody wants to hear about my anxiety and my depression, so I'm going to isolate. And we need to be engaging that and making sure people know that they are not alone. But in addition to that, Psalm 34:18 says that the Lord is near the brokenhearted. He is close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. If you want to know where God is in the midst of loneliness, in the midst of depression, in the midst of anxiety, He's close. He's right there, whether you feel Him or not. And we just need to trumpet this truth that you are not alone to those who are battling this issue. Another truth is you bear the image of God. Go back to Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. And you will see that when God created humanity, He created each person in His image, in His likeness. And I think that proclaiming that truth will remind people that if I'm thinking about taking my own life, I'm literally thinking about destroying something that bears His image. Does God really want me to do that? Third, every life matters to God. Every life matters to Him. Don't ever forget that. It's something that may sound like a weird thing to say, like, yeah, duh. But the truth of the matter is that the lie that buys into suicide is that, but maybe mine doesn't. Maybe at least in this moment, mine doesn't. Maybe actually things would be better if my life didn't happen, my life didn't exist. And we must help people understand that if God created you, and He created you in His image, you bear His image, you matter to Him. He has a plan. He has a purpose. You have a place in His world, and ultimately by faith in Jesus Christ in His kingdom. And then a fourth one is And I love this one because I love having a task that can be done. You can recognize and rule over suicidal thoughts. You can recognize those thoughts and you can rule over them. I love that. I go back to the story of Cain and Abel, and in Genesis 4, 6, and 7, I love this quote. God says this. He says that sin is crouching at your door. He's saying this to Cain. Cain is so jealous of his brother Abel that he wants to kill him and plans to kill him, and he ends up killing him. And he says, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. God wouldn't say that if that wasn't possible. You can recognize and rule over the thing that goes against his design. You know, and just like it's easy for us to know and understand that it's not a part of God's design for us to kill someone else and murder them, it's also against his design for us to take our own life. That is not part of his design. So we must recognize that and rule over that. We can actually choose to do that. The reason we're even talking about suicide is the question that was submitted to us in the Frequently Asked Questions series was, what happens to the soul of someone who commits suicide? I thought it was very important that we talk about the issue of suicide first before getting to that question. I believe the answer to that question is actually easy. I'm sure it's been debated. There's others who may disagree. But this is another truth that I want you to know and understand, and that is this: the last thing you do doesn't determine your eternal destination. Whether or not you have believed in Jesus Christ determines your eternal destination. That is something to always remember. So even though it's against God's design for someone to take their own life, someone who's placed their faith in Jesus Christ and trusts in Him and Him alone for salvation, but has battled anxiety, depression, or whatever the situation is, ultimately takes their life. And that's the last act they do before they die. That does not cause them to no longer be able to enter into heaven at all. In fact, I've got friends and people I'm acquainted to who had loved ones who've believed in Jesus Christ and trusted in them, but they've just battled some form of mental illness or some form of depression, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. And at the end, they just so struggled with that there was that moment where the lies were too believable and they took their own life. And I would stand before you with confidence saying that does not take away the eternal security of that believer. Having said that, I hope that you don't hear saying, well, that makes suicide a viable option for someone. Absolutely not. There is so much pain and wreckage. I believe that if someone who is thinking about taking their life, if they could just play the tape forward and see the pain and the hurt it does to those who care most about them, and they actually see that and feel that, I don't believe they would ever do it. Just one of the things that I want to close with is just throwing up on your screen right now this hotline number and this hotline chat line that you can let people know about. And maybe this is something you need to put in your phone or whatever, that you can share with people, that there is, if nothing else, this is your 911. You know, if you're thinking about ending your life and you think you're all alone, you have no one to talk to, even the people that you know love you and would love for you to share this with them, but for some reason you're very tempted to just not open up, utilize these numbers, utilize this text number. Discuss this together with your group. Man, I hope you enjoy some great discussion and some great prayer time together in an issue that's becoming a bigger issue. And as long as this issue gets bigger, it's going to touch your life personally and your group's lives personally the more this grows. Let's recognize and rule together.